Welcome back to the Players Ball podcast for ATLians by ATLians, number one podcast in Stankonia. I am your co-host, Alex the Great. I'm joined by MB. We are super successful, the best podcasters you know, best podcasters you watch. We didn't hear from you last week. We wanna hear from you in the comments. Like, subscribe, hit that notification button. That being said, MB, how you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good, man. It's been a fun week. A lot of exciting news. A lot of things to talk about. But before we get into it, I just gotta shout you out with an early birthday. What you doing?
So we're gonna do a little do some cake and s'mores, those super sweets. Chop down a tree today. Like a real one. It was dead. But I got some firewood. I've been asking, so I stay in a townhome community, and I've asked them several times to remove this dead tree because it's been dead for it's coming up on 2 years. They haven't done it, so taking things into my own axe. It was a saw, but axe sounded better. Man, do you own a chainsaw?
I do. I have to where I'm at.
Man, yeah, I want one. I think I didn't really need it for this project, right? It was just a small birch, I believe, but it was dead as a doornail, so I just started lopping branches off with this saw, and we're gonna burn it, have a little fire pit. I got a off-brand solo stove, so gonna light it up.
Yeah.
That's Friday, and then Saturday I want to do some VR. I was supposed to send a message into the group to see if anybody'd be interested, but I haven't done that yet, so we'll see.
Yeah, unfortunately, I won't be able to partake in any festivities with all the kids' obligations that are going on this weekend. But
busy man.
Yes, sir.
Busy man.
But happy early birthday.
Appreciate that, man. One other note. To those who started the episode last week, the audio does clear up around the 6-minute mark. Just skip it. Skip straight to Ronald Acuna's injury, and you'll be good to go. A lot of great content. That was a really good episode, and that does go away. So apologies,
We're new to this.
Give us a little grace.
As far as
We're true to this.
As far as the recording goes, we lack some experience, so technical difficulties have been a challenge, but we'll get there. And next time something like that happens, we'll just cut that audio out of the pod, so you don't have to skip through it.
Millennials, power up! Let's go, baby.
Yeah. So that being said, we started off last week talking about a little bit of Blue Land and the Thrashers and the Atlanta Gladiators, the subdivision of the NHL, hosted a Atlanta Thrashers night that sold out. It's the second or third year that they've hosted this event, and every year it gets, really well received by the public, and it just showcases the desire of the Atlanta natives to have the return of hockey. And some big news came out yesterday about the bid for hockey in Atlanta, and this kind of caught me off guard. So there is an ownership group that formally submitted the request for an expansion to the NHL. So now it can go through the paperwork process, and it has to be voted on by the Board of Governors of the NHL. But, we had talked in previous episodes about this development going on in Forsyth County where they're calling it the Gathering. They're building like a 20,000 seating capacity arena and a mixed-use development. That is not who submitted this request. It's a second group that is involved in the redevelopment of North Point Mall and the surrounding area. And what's really interesting about this particular bid is it is headed up by a former NHL player who resides in Atlanta, who had a lot to do with the Thrashers night at the Gladiators, and the team around him has experience in a multitude of different sports and entertainment businesses. And what they're talking about is, a stadium, obviously, for the Thrashers to play, or whatever, Atlanta Hockey Team 3. But it's also going to include, professional soccer stadium venues, professional in terms of meeting the requirements like size and caliber, not necessarily directed towards MLS, right? But also lacrosse and some other sports venues in and around the area. I would say one of the kind of bigger points to me is, you get Alpharetta, North Point Mall, you're not quite as far outside the perimeter as you would be all the way up in Forsyth and Cumming. The other part is you have MARTA transportation that already reaches out close to North Point, and there's talks of expansion all the way to North Point. So I would say this particular bid is intriguing because the level of reach would be a lot easier for a lot of the potential fan base.
Regionally, though, it's not. I mean, those are the same part of North Atlanta. One is further out, right? I would still like to see it a little closer to the city. There's only one way to North Point Mall. I mean, there are several if you're using surface streets, but 400 has enough people on it as it is, and I know that's not Gwinnett. So is that Fulton still?
It is Fulton, yeah.
The northern Atlanta area has still been very resistant to public transportation. So I don't know that would be something that I've heard about that, but I heard the same thing with Gwinnett, and then when it went to a vote, they shot that down. It wasn't even close. It is, and it's wild that it's a separate group, but I do lump those areas together, right? Because you use 400 to get to both of them, you just keep going another 15 minutes to get to Forsyth.
So I think
it's kind of weird that he put it in that same little area, right?
Yeah, so technically speaking, I believe the gathering will have an Alpharetta address. So they are both Alpharetta. One's Fulton County Alpharetta, and the other would be Forsyth. So they are very close together. It is kind of intriguing, right? Because this is the first time I've really heard or seen anything related to this particular group and their desire for NHL in the city. So we might find ourselves in a bidding war.
I was about to say that. Are we entering a bidding war? Which would be really dope. I mean, that just shows what you were saying, right? There is a desire in the South for some hockey, specifically in Georgia. Because can't call that Atlanta. I'm sure they will, but yeah, no, that's exciting. That's exciting. I wonder if it is that Georgia hockey lives in Alpharetta, right? The fans, that is.
So I did.
If both separate bids are still out, if a third bid comes out and it's Alpharetta, then they know something that we don't, right?
Yeah, I did see a study that the group who's kind of pushing towards the gathering put out there, and I forget the exact mile range, but it's a pretty narrow, in terms of miles, but it's like 1.4 million people or something like that is the immediate reach, and within that there's a large hockey fan constituency. I don't know how they gather that information, but I do know when we
market research.
Yeah, but how many people did they poll?
Enough for two bids to be in the same area.
Yeah, so I do know when we were younger, the Forum or not the Forum, the Cooler was in
I remember the cooler. Yeah.
right there by North Point Mall, and that was the place where ice hockey existed. If you played, little league ice hockey or even roller hockey, the Norcross roller hockey team played out of the Cooler. I think
I
most.
thought that was near Gwinnett Place Mall, like north on Satellite. I might be thinking somewhere else because I went ice skating there.
I think there's the Duluth Ice Forum.
Yeah, maybe that sounds like where I was based on the city.
And there's more of those that have popped up around Georgia, but at the time we were in high school, like freshman, sophomore year, the Cooler was really the only one, and it's right there in that demographic, right? It's right around the corner from North Point Mall, so I do think there's some validity to that, area of town having a decent population of hockey fans.
Yeah, I don't want to go too much deeper into it, but I would have you ask your old season ticket holder friend, what if she got an email, like an interest email from them? I'm sure they still have her contact information or her family's contact information. That's another way that they could have reached out to people and seen, where they were, if they were interested, current address, if anything had changed. Right, because I'm sure that trek to the city wasn't desirable for everyone, especially if everyone that was going was in Alpharetta or North Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, I found it easy to get to Thrashers games from Marietta, but it's straight down.
Marietta's right out. It's right off 285 though. Right?
Yeah, straight down 75, and you're there.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, big news there.
I can't wait to hear a little more, man.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
That's exciting. I hope that actually materializes into a team being back here in the near future.
And I believe the what I had read was 2026 would be the earliest we would actually see hockey in Atlanta. So
that's not too far off.
It's not too far off, but it is 2 years.
Yeah. Okay. All right, man. That's good. Bring the ice back today.
Yeah.
So the next one, I don't know a whole lot about it. I'm hoping that you can shed some light. So I did see a comment that Nick Saban made about the players wanting to know how much money they're going to get paid and how much playing time they're going to get. I did not know he spoke with Congress. So tell me and our followers, the loyal 18, about Nick in Congress, man.
Yeah, so Nick Saban appeared in Washington yesterday with Ted Cruz, and I don't know who else was.
Ted Cruz.
Yeah, I don't know who else was there, but
the Motley Crew, man.
Yeah, but they were asking questions basically on the state of college football, and Nick had some comments that people basically ran with on social media. One in which you kind of hit on, which is he made a statement that at the end of the year, him and his wife will host recruits and their families over at their house. And his wife asked him a question like, what are we doing this for? Like, why do we do this? And she made the statement that it used to be about developing, young kids. And now all they want to know about is how much money they're going to get paid. How much money can you give me? Yeah. And Nick basically says that it had an impact, a pretty significant impact on his choice to retire. He also went on to say that college football, basically as he knew it in the 50 years that he coached, is non-existent anymore. Like that type of college football landscape didn't exist. And I think that it's natural to say, well, over 50 years, things are going to change, things are going to evolve for better and for worse. But what he was just kind of targeting really was the last 5 years with the transfer portal and NIL coming into effect. It's really thrown the sport for a loop. He did say later in his questioning that he believes that the players deserve some sort of revenue split, but not to be employees, because if you make players employees, then there's no more student athlete, right? You completely take out the academic part of college athletics, which, you know, you can argue a lot of that has gone away. There are some players.
They're not in class like that, right?
There are definitely some players out there that they don't need really to finish their degree. They know that they're going to get drafted. And some of them, you know, Jake Fromm is one that I can think of, you know, recently, who went back and graduated after the fact. There's quite a few people that do that. Our boy Jody Meeks, you know, he left after 3 years at Kentucky and went back in the summers while he was in the NBA and finished his degree. Steph Curry did it. So it's not uncommon for athletes to still obtain their degree, because your professional career, you know, that time frame is pretty short, and you have to have a plan B. Some of the scary things I think that come out at NIL are you have 18, 19, 20-year-olds making millions of dollars that will become accustomed to a certain lifestyle, and let's just say worst case scenario, they get injured and they can't play football anymore. And are they going to be willing to finish school and take, you know, a median salary, you know, of the rest of America, when they're used to, you know, having, you know, $1 million in the bank?
Well, a couple of things. What option will they have? Right, they won't have one. if they can't play ball anymore, got to get a job. If you don't work, you don't eat, man. This is America, right? The number of college athletes that go pro is a small percentage, right? And I think I would be willing to bet the number of college athletes that do go pro, that number is even smaller of the ones that circle back and get their degree. And I say that to say that I think I would lend some credence to the idea that they become employees, right? If they're not necessarily graduating, maybe that's an added benefit, right? Instead of like a 401k, you have a education package where you can allot certain funds, you know, get some tax incentives or something like that. It can't just be, hey, you take that NIL money and pay for your own school, right, if you want to continue your education. But something to the effect of a benefit to them that they would now get as an employee could be, okay, we'll pay for your school if box A, B, and C are checked. I don't know what all would have to happen for that to occur, but I wouldn't be against it, just because the student athlete, there's a lot of them that won't go pro, but there's enough of them that now are being paid via NIL, where I do think something has to change.
Yeah, so there was another side of it. So the student athlete component is one piece, but the other part is if they become employees. Right now, the way the model works is you have, well, first of all, college football is not a business in the sense that other businesses, you know, have profit or revenue coming in and people massively profiting. You do have coaches that are making tons of money, but 80% of the revenue that's generated is reinvested into athletics at the university, whether it be new football facilities, soccer facilities, funding the women's basketball team to travel, you know, cross country for tournaments, what have you. So if you take away, so now their employees and all the revenue is being split amongst the athletes and the coaches and the football team, it's its own entity, and you're not reinvesting that money back into the university. So now, women's lacrosse is no longer, it won't exist, or some of those other, athletic won't
It'll
exist, right?
exist. They have to drive themselves to have to they have to transport themselves, to their venues, buy their own equipment. No, that's not funny. Women's lacrosse needs to survive. But I mean, it doesn't mean that the sponsorships are gonna go away, right?
What sponsorships?
NILs are basically sponsorships. So you have colleges that are paying people, but then you do have companies,
Well, you
right?
don't
Like
really have colleges that are.
Meineke.
You don't really have colleges that are
Not
playing.
technically. They're arranging the deals. I'm sure some of that money's coming from the university themselves. And if it's not, then the point is moot, right?
So it's not, and I'll tell you why. So right now you have a model in which boosters are funding collectives. So they're no longer funding, the engineering school or the school of business, because they're putting all this money into a fund to pay the student athletes to come play football for them. So if you don't have that cycle of revenue generating back to the school to reinvest in athletics and academics, you don't have the booster money anymore because you're funneling that to the players.
The players are getting the booster money now.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And that's one of the reasons why it's not sustainable, right? You have this issue.
You don't think so if the universities are now paying the players, you think the boosters go away?
No, the boosters start donating money back to the university.
Right. So women's lacrosse, survives.
But the amount of money that the boosters generate pales in comparison to the TV ad revenue and the merchandising, which would be
also going to the university, right?
Today, but in a student or a football player as employed by, say, the University of Georgia, now that revenue is split amongst all 80 scholarship players, and I don't know at this point if you would have walk-ons or any of those. I think you have like around 120 people on the roster.
So this is my understanding. Not all programs. Probably the minority of programs, but they are swimming in money. They're making money hand over fist. There's enough to go around outside of football.
I don't know. I mean, Georgia just built an $80 million football facility.
Right. That's just it ain't cheap. $80 million. They just spent it. Like, Steve from from Chrysler is giving us that money. It's all right.
But
Jesus paid for that.
But that $80 million didn't come from Steve from Chrysler. The money generated from the SEC's revenue split for advertising and TV, plus the earnings. So the SEC, if say Georgia or Alabama wins the college football national championship, they get a bigger allotment of money. Like, I don't know what the amount is. I know at one point it was about $20 million. And then
but they didn't win. They didn't win.
It doesn't.
Now they got this $80 million facility. Whose name is on that?
I don't know.
That's what tell us where the money's coming from. Once we know whose name is on that building, we'll know who gave the money, and that person will continue to give money.
Perhaps.
Be it Steve or Visa, a corporate sponsor. But they're not gonna be short on dollars, bro. Like, do you see what these people are doing with money? Like, these people being, the universities, banks, all of American institutions seem to just be blowing money like it's going out of style. And I think it's probably partially because it is, but they're gonna crash and burn. It won't be tomorrow. So spend it and pay the kids.
I mean, I'm with the athletes getting paid, and I'm with them being able to
Not as
profit.
employees.
It's just when you start talking about as employees, it does start to take away a lot of the sanctity of the sport, as well as you get into a situation where, that $80 million that went into building that football facility, yes, there were donor dollars included in that, but the football program as a whole, when the SEC signs a multi-year, multi-billion-dollar contract with ESPN or CBS, it's divided amongst the schools. And then, like I was saying, when you win or you go to the CFP, you get another share that goes to the entire SEC. And then if you win it, you get the biggest lump of that money. So with the success of Georgia over the last 5 years, they've brought in a boatload of money, and they've
$80 million. Not slim.
They've reinvested it in the facilities because that's what it takes to be on top of the sport and to lure, the top athletes into wanting to play at your university.
Yeah. Okay. I won't. I can kick it off. I can keep going. We won't dive too far into it.
But I will say, just to kind of end the discussion, because I'm the same way. I could talk NIL and the business of college football for hours on end because I do find it fascinating. In recent, we had talked about the lawsuit with University of Tennessee and the rulings.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mentioned in that podcast that I thought we were, 5-10 years away from really seeing some major impacts. And I withdraw that statement today and think it's a lot closer than I had anticipated, especially with the likes of Nick Saban going to Washington and talking to Congress and basically lobbying Congress to step in and make some rules or set some barriers or guidelines, because if they don't, like, the current model is not sustainable. You and I both agreed on that when we were talking about Jackson Dart and his, NIL jet deal. And
big shout out Jackson.
Yeah.
I don't know. That doesn't sound very libertarian of you.
I'm not saying
Should
I want
Congress be the people that do it? Right? There's got to be a better party to implement some rulemaking than them. They don't do a good job with making rules for us, let alone a successful business.
Yeah, so I think that at this point the government kind of stepped in. They're the ones that opened Pandora's box with the NIL laws. No, I don't. I don't.
No, you're right.
I don't agree with more government intervention. That's not a core belief of mine. However, the government has basically stripped the NCAA of all of its authority. And at this point, there is no other governing body to legislate or regulate it. Now, there's a lot more interesting news in that front that can be discussed, and I'll just briefly introduce it and we can move on. But the College Football Playoff organization has been working on long-term deals and long-term outlook and that revenue split. And it looks like the Big Ten and the SEC are just inherently going to receive the majority take from a money standpoint. basically saying that the ACC and the other conferences mean nothing. You have these two powerful SEC, Big Ten power conferences, and that's all they really care about, and that's where they're going to feed the dollars. And I think there's some can argue why, like, they draw in the biggest crowds. They're the biggest contributors to, so they should get the biggest piece of the pie.
The last 5 champions, right?
Yeah. So the other side of that coin is you're really pushing to a 2-league model where you're just going to have 2 leagues. The ACC will probably get split and teams will come from the ACC over to the SEC, and you will basically have the NFL Junior League in the form of college football. And I don't even know at that point why the universities are even involved.
Right.
Other than the fact that they have the facilities.
Yeah, but even those, there's somebody's name on all those facilities. What's Doak? Is it Doak Stadium? I don't know whose that is.
Where are you talking about?
I don't know.
What
Georgia?
school?
What's Georgia's stadium name? Stanford?
It's Sanford Stadium, or it's Dooley Field at Sanford Stadium.
Dooley Field at Stanford Stadium. So Vince Dooley, I'm sure he had to contribute to get his name on there. His contribution was through his coaching. But the Sanfords, whoever they are, that's some old money. And, they're still making bank off of that, I'm sure.
Yeah. And it's Sanford without the T.
Stanford? Is it Stanford or Stanford? Samford. I got
you. Yeah, Sanford.
Is it Chelsea or Kelsey? You know that joke?
Yeah.
Rush Hour. Yeah. Oh, man. All right, man. Let's move on. Because what we want to get to. I'm gonna drop one quick update. Get your thoughts on it. Then we're getting to the Falcons. Bear with us, people, because look. You see what I got on my Julio Tuones jersey. You can still see the red marks on the back. Try to X that man out. Atlanta United. We talked about them briefly 2 weeks ago. Or was that last week? We didn't talk about it last week. They lost to Columbus 2 weeks ago, and you were like, they had the road woes. And the point that I didn't get to make there, because I didn't remember to, was the Columbus Crew won the MLS Cup, right? And they had a super dominant season at home. So I didn't think that was a huge knock. And then United came in this past Sunday and beat the brakes off of New England, right? And I don't know anything about New England, but Giakoumakis, go Giakoumakis! Giakoumakis had a hat trick. Diego Almada scored the 4th goal.
First.
And out of the 4, they had 4 total, but
yeah.
Giakoumakis, his hat trick was in the second half only. All right, so he did 3 in the second period, which is fire, man. I'm hopeful for him. We were actually downtown last week. There's this new food hall. I don't think it's new, but it's on the west side, and there were so many people out in their United gear because it was a night game. I know that crowd was rocking in there. So I think United's going to do well if we can stay healthy. We still got to come back on the Crew and get some redemption, but I'm not as concerned as I think we were after that first game. Just adding those facts of who they were playing, how much success they had last year, and how they bounced back in this one. What are your thoughts on Atlanta United's game?
Yeah, I think my original point was that I was disappointed that we lost, even if it was the Crew, even if it was the reigning MLS champion. One of our issues in the previous season was our lack of ability to get a result on the road. And so I was just disappointed. We started off the season 0-1, got the result, got the 3 points last week. We got another match coming up Sunday. I'm hopeful. I mean, we made the playoffs last year. We
ran into the Crew, into a better squad,
and we took the home game against the Crew. You know, we went 2-1 in the format that they introduced last year. So I'm hopeful.
Yeah.
You know, I want the team to succeed. I think it's amazing how much support there is for Atlanta United in such a small history as a organization, and their games
Everyone likes a champion.
Yeah. But even before they won anything, there was a lot of support for the team. They had the supporters groups that had formed long before they ever played their first game. So
that sounds like what what hockey's doing. Right, whenever that team does return to the city, I mean the fans will be there. It'll be automatic. And if they can come in and pull a Golden Knights and win it their first year, woo, could go crazy, man. But hey, listen, let's get to the juice, man. Let's get to the juice. The Falcons. A lot of updates. Last week we talked about how Captain Kirk had he and his wife were on Zillow. Mike Florio, he caught a lot of flack, especially around, that Kyle Pitts comment that he had already negotiated with Kyle Pitts for his jersey number. Kirk Cousins is now Falcon, so maybe he knew exactly what he was talking about. You want to react to that first, or do the smaller hits and end with old Kurt?
I say we just dive into Kurt because
let's dive in. What are your thoughts on Kurt?
All right, so I've had 48 hours to kind of ruminate on this, and
ruminate, love it. That's a key word.
My initial thought, you saw it, was the puke emoji. Yeah. I was not excited about the news. I'm still, kind of on the fence, but I've let my emotions push them aside and tried to look at this, more objectively and kind of break down the pros and cons in my mind. So I'm going to start with some of the cons because they were similar to what I felt before this went down. Buddy is our age. He's coming off an ACL surgery, right? I couldn't imagine
Achilles.
Sorry,
corrected me, which feels worse.
Yeah, Achilles surgery. He's not the most mobile. So I understand that we're not concerned about his ability to get outside the pocket and get us 10 yards. But you still have to drop back. You still generate a lot of your power in your throwing motion from the lower half. Through the feet, through the legs, to the arm, hips, shoulder, right? And so it does concern it does concern me that he's coming off the injury. Now, he did have a press conference today, and he did do a short interview with one of the radio hosts on 92.9 that I happened to catch on my way home this evening. And one of the things, they asked him about the injury, and he says he's not going to be ready for another 4 months. And so I did the math, and that puts him out into July. So,
training camp.
It's not great. Yeah, he said as far as physical goes, everything would pass today except for the Achilles.
We would hope so. That's what you just had surgery on, buddy.
Yeah. So that's not great. So I'm concerned about the age. I'm concerned about the injury. And then I'm also concerned about the money, which once we dove into the contract, so we got 4 years, $180 million with $100 of that guaranteed. So when you dive into the details, it's really front loaded. That $90 million of that $100 guaranteed will get paid out in the first 2 years. So that leaves year 3 with $10 million guaranteed, and then nothing guaranteed in year 4. So So realistically, if this thing doesn't work out after 2 years, we can cut ties and we're not going to be in cap hell like we were with Matt Ryan's contract. We're not going to take $75 million in dead money. So that gives me a little bit peace of mind. But it's still a long contract to offer, someone. He's going to be 40 if he plays out his contract, which I don't believe. No part of me believes he will play more than 3 years of that 4-year deal. Right? Why structure it that way with an $80 million or some, number of 80 in year 4, right? It just that fourth year has to be a pretty large base salary number. So I don't think they did that. Or I feel like they did that knowing that he would never play out that contract in its entirety. They would either extend him or let him walk before you got to year 4. Some other kind of cons in my mind is he had a lot of weapons in Minnesota and they weren't able to get it done. And one of the reasons is that their offensive line was garbage. I don't feel like our offensive line is that much better. So you still...
I do.
I don't.
Go ahead.
Desmond Ridder got sacked a lot last year.
Desmond Ridder held the ball way too long. He overthought everything. He couldn't analyze. The reason that they said they brought Kirk Cousins in is because he's quick on his feet. That he can assess the situation quickly, evaluate quickly, and make the play that needs to be done. Des could not do that. Marcus Mariota couldn't do that with an hour in the backfield. They say that Kirk can. I agree with your earlier cons. I do think there's a chance he plays out that contract. You don't extend him if he doesn't play. If you don't expect him to play the 4 years. I don't remember how old TB12 was, but he's more of a one-of-one. Aaron Rodgers is up there right now. Kurt is also not in that company either.
I'm not saying he wouldn't play 4 years. I'm just saying he wouldn't play 4 years under the current deal.
Well, you definitely. That's how we got into the Matt Ryan situation, right?
Well,
we got his contract up.
Well, we kept pushing the guaranteed money back. We're not gonna.
We're not gonna be able to do that this time, yeah.
Well, I mean, you could technically do it, but I don't know why you would. You front loaded it for a reason because you wanted an out, just in case.
So I was hearing that if we would just end up doing $50 million for the first 2 years, if we wanted him gone after 2 years. I think the injury is definitely my biggest concern. His age as well, but it's his age combined with the injury that's my biggest concern. There's a video circulating on, I guess he put it out on his social media, him throwing. I had not heard yet of him saying that he was 4 months out. I guess that puts him in time for training camp, not OTAs, which is, I guess that's fine. I don't know what we're going to do with – so I have a theory. Kirk Cousins is a very solid quarterback. He's a great decision maker. Over the last 2-3 years, he's been top in the league on all the numbers that count. Percentage, touchdown to interception ratio. What if he's coming in to, like we said, with some of the other options, to be the bridge? Because he's not the long-term option. What if he's the bridge for Desmond Ridder?
I mean, I think there's another con that I had listed was the fact that he is just a bridge, right? He is
a bridge.
We'll get 2 years, 3 years if he plays well. But he's not the long-term franchise quarterback that we're looking for. And I will say, on the flip side, the pro that is attributed to that same sentiment is we now have an opportunity to have a young quarterback learn from a veteran that's had a lot of success in this league. Now, is that going to be Desmond Ridder? It very might well be, but I'm not necessarily sold on the fact that it will be. And we will know more once we see what happens in the draft. And it may not be this year, but I would hope they would make a decision this year. But in worst case scenario, next year, you're bringing in a rookie to learn and be under, Captain Kirk. Because that's what I think really, I mean, you've said it, Desmond Ridder really suffered from having Marcus Mariota as the vet in the room and not Matt Ryan.
A lot of the times during those games, he looked like he was doing the same things as Marcus Mariota. It was nerve-wracking what he was doing. But you said, I wanted to ask a follow-up. You said you hope that a decision is made in this draft. What decision? What are you talking about?
So if the guy is not going to be Desmond Ridder, if that's not who they want to carry the franchise long term, if they've already said, he doesn't have it, even under Kurt's tutelage, he's still not going to be the guy, then they have to go out and get somebody in this draft to be that guy.
Who?
I don't know who, but
you can't trade up for one of these guys. It's a deep quarterback draft, but they're all gone. Most of them will be gone before they get to us. And we don't want to waste a first-round pick. That was a pro for me, is because now that we have Kirk coming in, we can use the 8th round pick or the 8th overall pick to draft somebody that makes an immediate impact. You don't do that with a quarterback.
No, and I
don't trade back to get a quarterback either, right? And we already have a 3rd rounder. I don't want to try that again. I might as well, see what I can get out of him, see if he can make improvements or strides. Ideally, Kirk stays healthy and we don't have to see him. But the NFL, I wish it wasn't like this, but they don't draft quarterbacks to sit anymore. And I wish they did.
Right? They do in some places, and they've been rather successful at it. Look at Green Bay. They've done it twice now.
Yeah, but they're the only people, right? Look at Bryce Young. Look, there's more failure than there is success.
And I think
Sam Darnold, all these players, Zach Wilson, all these players were brought in. They had all this pressure on them. They had to be day one starters because they were taken in the 1st round, and they flopped. And that's not the way. If you want a sustainable, if you want a quarterback that's going to be your guy for years, Green Bay has the method. But they are really the only people that are doing it that way. Jordan Love looks like he's going to be a dog, but he sat behind Aaron Rodgers for 3 years, 4 years. Aaron Rodgers sat behind Brett Favre for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
All right. Even Patty Mahomes sat for
a year.
What, a year, 2 years? Was it a year? Behind Alex Smith, right?
I think it was a year and a half. I think he got thrown in because Alex Smith got hurt.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's few and far in between quarterbacks at this point.
I hear you.
We see it working, right? In the examples that we just mentioned. So it can work for Dez, because I wholeheartedly agree. Kurt is a bridge. He is supposed to come in. Let me get you these odds. He is supposed to come in and win, though, right? And I think that is the expectation. So you have the top 5, or the 3, right? San Francisco, Kansas City, Ravens. Then you got the top 5. After them is Buffalo, Lions, Bengals, Cowboys, and Eagles. So we're at the 8. Then you have Miami, Green Bay, Houston, and Atlanta. Our odds change with the Kirk Cousins move from plus 5,000 to plus 3,000 to win the Super Bowl. That's a lot of movement based on one move, right? We haven't done really anything else.
I think
we have, but Kurt is the reason for that jump. So you've talked about Vegas. The odds makers know it.
Well, looking at the odds, I think the more compelling story is that as far as winning the division, we went from plus 110 to minus 110. So they basically are giving the Falcons the best odds to win the division. And I think that's, a realistic target, and I think we should win the division under Kirk Cousins. But I want to go back to the draft.
We should have won it last year too, but go ahead. Same situation. We should have won it.
Agreed.
We didn't. So we'll see what happens.
But when it comes to the draft, I hear you. Not a lot of teams are using the Green Bay model, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't, and we won't. And I'm not saying that we use pick number 8 to get a QB. I'm not even suggesting we get another third rounder. But you and I have talked, and I do think there's a realistic chance that you have someone like Michael Penix Jr. sitting available in round 2. And if he's there, I take him. And I sit him behind Kirk Cousins for 2, maybe 3 years.
So you're going to pay him money that could go to it. There are other needs.
There are other needs.
We need a safety. We need a cornerback. We need edge rusher. Now, you can draft him or you can pay him. And we just gave up a lot of money. So the amount of money that we're going to be able to pay people is very limited. That's how we end up with a Darnell Mooney, right? Hopefully he does well. But,
that
I would have preferred that we get Justin Fields if we were getting a Bear. I don't know where that guy came from. But the money is limited now. You need to fill those holes with draft picks. Michael Penix sitting, him and you don't win any money. You actually, it's still a cap hit nonetheless if you keep Ritter or lose him. So will you just cut him and then sit Michael Penix Jr.?
Yeah, well, they'll more than likely carry 3 quarterbacks. So you cut Heineke and you carry all 3. And then Dez and Penix Jr. basically battle to see who's going to be the heir apparent. But I want to touch on.
No, I don't want to do that.
I want to touch on the money because that was my last kind of con, and I started to bring it up with the contract situation. But my last con is by signing him to such a big deal, we basically took 90% of the cap space we had to fill a roster with this offseason and gave it to one guy, and we do still have a lot of holes. I saw I heard that, and I was not aware of this prior, but they were talking about it on the radio, that we only had 2 rostered wide receivers.
Yep. So
that's a pretty big hole. We saw, I don't know if you saw, but I saw today, what was his name? Was it Hodges? They got signed. Who were all our backups? I mean, you had Scotty Miller,
Mac Hollins.
Mac Hollins is who I saw got signed.
He got signed.
Yeah. No news on Scotty Miller.
And Jefferson. He's not signed yet, and the thought is that we will bring him back, and he would be a cheap addition. Him being acquired from LA, and then we bringing in all this LA staff. They think that he will be there, but he didn't. He wasn't no dog, right? We need an upgrade at wide receiver, and it looks like we're cycling one set of sub-tier wide receivers out for another. Unless we're going to draft one. And if we're going to draft one, I don't want to do it with the 8th, but I will do it with that second round pick, and that's why I can't give Michael Penix any time or attention. We need a wide receiver in there to help Drake London. And the best option to do that, especially with the names that are coming off the board, is going to be in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen quite a few mocks now that have us taking Rome Odunze at 8, which he would be a hell of an addition, but I'm with you. I don't know if I want to go wide receiver with my number 1 pick.
Not that high, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's not – is he projected to be as good as Drake London? Drake was a very highly touted wide receiver coming out.
I mean –
and he's not even a clear number 1.
Rome Odunze is
Malik Neighbors was. I mean, obviously Marvin Harrison Jr., but Malik Neighbors was number 2, right?
The top 3 are Marvin Harrison Jr., Neighbors, and Odunze. They're the top 3 in the draft, as many project. Now, I think A.D. Mitchell and Ladd McConkey and some other guys, Xavier Worthy. There's a ton of guys in this draft at that position that I think a second or a third you could get a very good wide receiver. And so
100%.
if you did get a second, use your second round pick for a quarterback, I still think you could get wide receiver help at round 3. And we have 2 third-rounders now, as Calvin Ridley signed a massive contract with the Tennessee Titans today.
Which is pretty nuts. Do they still have former Texan? He was the best wide receiver in the league for a long time.
DeAndre Hopkins?
Yeah. DeAndre Hopkins. Is he still on contract?
I have no idea. I think he is, but...
Him with... Yeah, that's going to be a sick 1-2 punch. Him and Ridley.
Yeah.
I wonder if he's still on there. Who is it again? What's his name?
DeAndre Hopkins.
DeAndre Hopkins.
D-Hop. But yeah, I think the biggest question mark is that number 8 pick. Do you hold it? And, I mean, you should be able to get your pick of defensive players if you want to go defense at 8. Jared Verse and Dallas Turner are 2 of the big name edge rushers, which we definitely need edge help because we can't afford it in free agency, and most of the big names are gone. Did you see the report that the Falcons had offered Danielle Hunter $75 million? And
I did not.
So apparently
no, thank you, sir.
Apparently we offered him a 3-year, $75 million deal. Allegedly, I'll say, the internet goons might be getting me, but allegedly we offered him 3 years, $75 million, and he decided to go to the Texans because they had more guaranteed money, and Texas doesn't have state income tax, which both those things are,
solid reasons.
Solid reasons. So if that report is true, I get it. I get why he chose to go to the Texans, but man, I was really hoping that they were a package deal. Kirk Cousins, Danielle Hunter.
That would have been sick.
Yeah.
D-Hop is under contract next year with the Titans.
Yeah. So the other...
But we need our 1-2 punch like that, man. And we don't have it. We got a 1. I'm a big Drake Leonard fan. We need to get him honestly, a Superman, if not a Robin. He don't even have a Robin. So
they're really high on Mooney.
Batman.
They're really high on Mooney.
Well, so they're saying it's the quarterback that did it?
Well, I saw some statistics that someone published that said that he was overthrown on 70% of his deep balls.
It means he's slow.
No, it means that they're
he's slow. Couldn't get out there.
And I don't know if he talked about it in his press conference, but he definitely mentioned it on the radio. Kirk Cousins said, he had watched film of him. He was high on him, and that he sees him get a lot of separation. And now,
Mooney?
Yeah. So they just have to build that rapport.
Yeah. We signed a dog. Did you see that?
Yeah, Charlie Warner. Charlie Warner.
Yeah. How was he in college? Was he pretty good?
Yeah, he was a solid college player. They brought him in as a blocking tight end. And I do think, we talk about receiver. Kyle Pitts really is more of a wide receiver than he is a tight end, and I expect to see him played as such this year. So...
Yeah. The Kansas City, they only needed one wide receiver because they had Travis Kelce, right? Maybe we can follow that model. Not a whole lot of other people got the ball outside of him, and I always forget the rookie, but he balled out in the Super Bowl. He had a great playoffs. So maybe it is. I mean, I guess that's just more ball to go around if you just have two dominant ball catchers as opposed to 3 or 4. But I don't know if Darnell Mooney's the guy that's going to take the top off. Is he a burner? Do you know? I saw some Bears games. I wasn't really impressed.
I think I saw his 40 was sub 4.4.
I said sub 3. What?
Yeah.
You're in a 2.99. Like, damn, is it the Flash?
But yeah, so I do think we draft a wide receiver, hopefully in second or third round. I'm thinking defensive end with number 8, but I could also see us going corner because Jeff Okudah signed somewhere else. You really need someone to go next to what's his name? AJ Terrell, thank you. I was thinking something with a T, just couldn't get it.
You got me. I got you, brother.
Yeah.
D-Hop is one of the best wide receivers that's played the game. I can't remember that man's name.
Yeah, so they need another corner. Terrion Arnold from Alabama is a great option. If we go later, I don't know if he'll go first round, but he is viewed in like the top, 25 players, prospects. But Kamari Lassiter, former Dog, I would love to see him be corner chosen. I don't know if he's a first rounder. You definitely don't take him at 8, but we could because of how many holes we have, trade 8 to stack some extra picks, right? And so if it's late first round and Kamari is viewed that high, then maybe take him there. If you can get him later in the draft, I think he's a good option. So, yeah, I really do.
That's a tough scenario, right? You have to have that the stars have to align for trade back to occur and be beneficial to you.
Yeah. I do think, though, that will, with the 8th pick, go defense, either defensive end or corner. If I was a betting man, that's where I'd place my money. And if I wanted to hedge,
those are our 2 biggest needs. I'd agree with you.
If I had to hedge, I would go wide receiver because sometimes those specialists are hard to pass up on.
Skilled players, that's especially if you got somebody there that you didn't expect to be there. I'm looking at it now. It's got Malik Neighbors going at 7.
Yeah.
Obviously, second wide receiver off the board, but man, if there was something we could do to get Marvin Harrison Jr., but it would have to be outlandish. His dad was one of my favorite. He's one of my favorite wide receivers in the pros for a long time.
Always on that Marvin Harrison Sr. train.
He was fire on 2K, man.
Yeah. So we hit a lot of topics as far as the cons of Captain Kirk, the which way we may go in the draft now that we've secured a quarterback. But I want to go through some of the pros. I mean, we talked about a few, but I think there are some pretty significant pros. And really, you had said you wanted to know the reason why. And I think if you start looking at the pros, it'll start to kind of it'll paint that picture for you why we went the direction we went. And I'm going to start with continuity. So the offense that they ran in Minnesota, their head coach, was of the Sean McVay tree.
Right.
Our offensive coordinator is of the Sean McVay tree. So the terminology, the base system is going to be the same in Atlanta that he ran in Minnesota. So
heavy play action, right? You seen that?
Yeah, so having already that familiarity helps with the timeline in terms of him being injured. Now, he still has to build the rapport with the other players, and they have to get timing and all that, and that takes reps to get. But at least he's not having to manage an injury.
Raheem Morris was with them in Washington for 3 years too.
Well, that was my next statement.
Oh man, my bad. I thought he was moving to a next pro.
No, I was just
Continuity.
That continuity, right? It helps with the transition period. Being familiar with the offense. Raheem Morris was coach in Washington during his time. It's all good. During his time there, so that's another continuity. That we kind of already laid out was, he has the ability to train his heir apparent, and he's one of the best, at the position. So you're not learning from a scrub like Mariota. You're learning from, a perennial, successful quarterback.
You like that?
Yeah. The other kind of pro, I would say, is hold on, I had it and now I lost it.
The tangibles, like you talked about his success, but his numbers were really good too.
Okay, so thank you. You refreshed where I was going. So we have Kyle Pitts, we have Drake London, we have Bijan. All those guys are on rookie deals, right? They cost you very little in the grand scheme of things. Well, you got Drake London. Well, first it's going to be Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts is in the last year of his rookie deal, unless we, take up his 5th-year option, which is going to cost you chunk change because it's an average, I believe, of salaries in that position. And then Drake London's going to be a year behind him, and then Bijan's a couple years away. But you're in a position where you have to win now before you have to pay all those guys. Because once you have to pay all those guys, we're not going to have the luxury of keeping everyone or keeping everyone and being able to fill the rest of the roster. So I do think with that evaluation, it makes sense to bring in someone who can win now. And I
think he fits that mold, yeah.
That's under the assumption that he can be healthy and stay healthy, right?
Question. Why is everybody trying to kill off Arthur Blank, man? I keep hearing, I've read it in articles, I've heard it on the radio, and I read it in a different author wrote it down, like, Arthur Blank's old. He has to win now. Like, this is a mob boss, man. He's going to live to 100 years old, right? I'm sure he wants to win, but it ain't because he's about to die, right? I don't like that narrative that they putting out on that, man. Don't kill me off in my own story. The Falcons is his story.
I've not seen that, but
oh yeah, it's out there.
I do think we are in a win now mode just because of the logistics of it, right? You've spent a lot of draft capital on those 3 guys that I mentioned, and if you don't take advantage of their minimal cost, then we're just gonna continue. Yeah, we're gonna continue to be a down franchise.
Yeah. Yeah, so I do think coming out of this deal, I'm being more cautiously optimistic this year. But I think we should win the NFC South. We should make an appearance in the Super Bowl. Right? No, maybe not that far. I don't know, man. It's anybody's ball game. Last year showed us that with the teams that made it. Obviously, the Super Bowl itself were the best 2 teams, and they were the best 2 teams pretty much all season. But, any given Sunday, Kansas City was only a touchdown away from losing to Baltimore. Baltimore's defense stood tall, right? They were tough.
I would argue pretty hard that the best 2 teams last year in the entirety of the season were Baltimore and San Fran. that Kansas City was the third best team in the AFC, but their playoff experience and their quarterback propelled them.
Regular season, it was definitely in Baltimore. Baltimore was the best team, but once the Chiefs made it, they were a favorite, like almost automatically. No matter who had success, they turn it on at the right time, man. They're successful. They're gonna be hard to beat. If we or anybody else makes it there.
We play KC this year, and there's one other big team. Is it Baltimore? We play Baltimore and Kansas City this year.
That's a hard little run.
I know.
Who do you think? Go ahead.
I know for certain we play KC, and there's another big, difficult team. I just can't remember who it is. We play that division, so
Kansas City's division.
Yeah.
Chargers. It ain't the Raiders or the
Bengals.
The Raiders or the Broncos. Broncos aren't. So you got the Chiefs, Chargers, Broncos, Raiders, and then you got Ravens, Steelers, Browns, Bengals.
I think it's
so
the Bengals.
We're playing the Chiefs, and it's got to be their division, right?
Yeah.
They're not in the Chiefs division, and the Broncos are gonna suck. The Raiders might be all right. You see what they're doing to try to build. I mean, it's Atlanta sports, but they're trying to build, instead of building an offense, they're trying to build a Patrick Mahomes stopper. They got one of the best defensive linemen. They had him already, and they paired him with another. Don't ask me either of their names.
Was it Christian Wilkins?
Saving time. Yeah. No.
Where did Wilkins go?
I think it actually was Christian Wilkins, and they paired him with the defensive end. God, man, I know he has a Kobe tattoo. Like, I can't even think of his name.
Crosby?
Like, he's dog. Yeah, Max Crosby. Yeah, Max Crosby and Christian Wilkinson. They're supposed to be a dynamic duo. Got a new coach. He's trying to kill off Arthur Davis. Nobody's calling for Mark Davis's head, right? So, or Arthur Smith. Nope.
Yep.
Blank.
There
we go. Mr. Blank. Oh man, this is not the night for names, man.
Yeah.
But I think what I wanted, as far as just make a decision and explain why you make it, they've done that. I touched on it a little bit. They made the decision, obviously, but his decision making, I could see what they wanted. They wanted somebody that could come in. You drop a quarterback in. Of the components that were available, he's probably the best guy.
He was for sure.
It's just a lot of money, and he's old and he's hurt. But we'll see how it turns out.
He's just crippled and geriatric.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I agree with the sentiment that he was the best available option, proven option.
For win now specifically, like you were talking about.
Yeah. I mean, I told you I've gone back and forth, and I've tried to look at this more objectively, and I think they did it for the right reasons. I don't like the money. That was something I was kind of weary of going into it when we talked about him specifically. But I do think that he can be successful as long as he can hold up. I do think we have some solid pieces in place. We got some holes we got to fill, but we have an opportunity to fill those. And we have no excuse not to win the division. And then if anything was proven this offseason or in this postseason was once you get in, anything can happen. I mean, Tampa Bay took out the Eagles.
Right.
Which no one saw that coming.
Well, some did. They had the home game. The Eagles were just trash almost second half, but I think it was more like the last third of the season. They were terrible. They won one game out of like 6 or 7. And they were at one point they were like 9-2. So
Yeah.
some people said the writing was on the wall for them. I think that Tampa team is still going to be pretty good. We should win out as far as the division is concerned, but that's who we're going to have to beat.
Yeah.
No concern with Carolina. No idea what they're doing, but bums. And then if the Saints go 0-17, it's a happy day for me.
It's
So
like that's a Super Bowl in and of itself.
not quite. Haven't been there and lost the way we did.
Yeah. But yeah, at the end of the day, when it comes to Kirk Cousins, I didn't like it at first. I still, not a huge fan of the money situation. I see why we did it. I think we're going to be successful. And at the end of the day, winning cures all, right? If he goes out there and he balls, and everything that we said, all the, the negatives, all the cons, like forget about them, because, it doesn't matter as long as we win. Like if you win, you shut everybody up. You shut up all the doubters, all the haters, all the people still, clamoring for Justin Fields. You shut them all up with a victory. So that's what I'm asking. I'm saying, Kurt, just go out there and win, and all the noise will silence.
Despite the things that I've said, Kurt, because I know you're listening, another celebrity follower of the pod, I got your back, man. You my quarterback. You my quarterback. So
some random but cool facts about Kurt, which he shared in his interviews and press conference. He has a lot of ties to the city. His wife is from here. She went to Centennial High School.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how old she is, but I imagine she was probably at Centennial around the same time we were in school. Just based off of Kurt's age. They got married here in Atlanta. One of his sons was born downtown Atlanta on Ted Turner Boulevard, or whatever it is. Ted Turner Street.
Yeah.
In the off seasons for several years, they lived in Atlanta at their in-laws' house, because the sport's so transient and they move around. There's not a whole lot guaranteed. So for a couple of years, they lived at his in-laws in Alpharetta during the off season. He said that I think it was 2016. He was at the playoff games that the Falcons were in. Even though he was not playing for the Falcons at the time and was playing football, he still came to the stadium to watch and enjoy. He said
That's dope.
his in-laws family is, big Braves fans, big Georgia Bulldog fans. They're Hawks fans. They go to games.
Not Falcons though.
He went to
mission.
He went,
but when you started naming the teams that his in-laws are fans of.
I mean, they're Falcons fans, but obviously they're going to be the fan of, their son-in-law. But I do think, all that's pretty cool.
That is dope.
He's going to embrace the city. I don't know if the city will embrace him. They will not if he loses. That's just the way it is in Atlanta.
Quavo already gave him a nickname.
Really?
Yeah, Kurt Blings.
So he in some of the
he's a big fan of the deal. So what he was saying
in some of the photographs that they had, from his official signing, since he officially signed today, now that the league year is open, him and his sons were all wearing iced out Dirty Birds chains.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. I gotta go get that picture, man.
Yeah, we'll drop a link in the description. But I do think that's cool, right? Like he'll embrace the city. So hopefully he wins, and the fan base will love him, the same.
Yeah, the winning. You said it already. Winning cures all. Oh, Kirk Frost. My bad. Said ice him out, Kirk Frost. That's what Quavo said.
Yeah.
And he's like our, he's our own. I mean, for basketball too. So I feel comfortable saying like he's our Jack Nicholson.
Hopefully he's not our Drake.
He is like our Drake.
You know
They
the
won that
Drake,
year. Yeah.
the curse.
No, they won.
I know they won one. I mean,
That
Joe
was it. That's all it took.
said Jody got a ring.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because of Drake, obviously, right? It was Drake talking trash to. It seemed like everybody was out that series. Like KD didn't play, Clay was hurt. I guess it was just Steph when the Raptors beat Golden State. I'm thinking, Spike Lee. That's the other person I was thinking of.
Yeah, Spike.
Yeah, or Billy Crystal with the Yankees. Right. Quavo is an Atlanta celebrity sports fan. So for him to deem Kurt a win, all right, celebrate him, give him a nickname, he's already trying to put the city on his back.
Yeah.
It'll work out.
So I don't want to
beat the Saints. That's it.
That's a good start for sure.
That's a good start.
I did see something earlier today that kind of had me laughing, but also cautious at the same time. And it was a Denver Broncos fan who posted on like Instagram or something a video when they announced that Russell Wilson was going to be the quarterback, and he was so excited and he was ecstatic. He was like, "Finally, we have a quarterback again," and all this stuff, and he's just clamoring on and on and on. And then we all know how that story played out. And so I'm just hoping that Kirk Cousin isn't our Russell Wilson.
Nah, he won't be. And I'm still rooting for DangeRuss, man. I hope he goes up there to Pittsburgh and balls out on Sean Payton's punk ass, man. I didn't like the way that ended. They left a bitter taste in my mouth, so I'm hoping he has success. Less than Kurt, but I want Kurt to shoot to the moon. But if Russ can be Ethereum, Kurt's Bitcoin, obviously. I ain't mad at that. We can't have an episode without a little BTC reference, man. Hit the all-time high today.
Yeah.
Not financial advice, but hey, man, let's call it, man. What's our outro? Sign us out, man.
Well, before I sign us out, I will say I saw some pretty wild memes with DangeRuss saying some corny catchphrase up in Steelerland. So if I can find them, I'll shoot them to you, and I will link them in the description.
All right, cool.
That being said,
of course he did. Goodness gracious, can't help himself.
No, it was poking fun at what he's gonna say, not what he's already said.
He hasn't actually said it yet.
Yeah, they were just hypothesizing what crazy Steeler catchphrase he could, come up with. But with that,
terrible towel, let's dry.
With that, appreciate everyone listening. If you've made it this far, please like, subscribe, rate, review, share with a friend, a family member. We've been at 18 subscribers for a couple weeks now. We appreciate
holding our group accountable, man. Bums, we can't get a single follower. Listen, we got like the streets is watching. We got the streets for 18.
Yeah, I mean we got like 40 some odd views, I think, on the last one or the week before. So we know y'all are watching. Just give us a like, subscribe, comment, help us out with that algorithm. If you keep coming back, we appreciate it, and please share with all those that you think would enjoy the content.
I wanted to give another shout out. I'm not gonna do it because I'm gonna get the name wrong. Let's sign off.
All right, y'all. Peace out.
Yep. See you on the next time. To your success.